All right, folks, we might think about making a start. Or not. Oh, dearie me. What was that noise? Don't like that. Okay. Hey, good. So I have slightly more romantic lighting now. It's nice. Good. So you can actually see this a little bit better. Didn't realise it was quite so glary. Alrighty, so let's crack on. The big question. Did ancient drugs actually work? Or is it all rubbish? Did we not have any effective medicines, really, until the 19th century onwards? It's a very good question. So we have learning outcomes. Hurrah! We have 5 of them. Again, these are what you get assessed on. So if you're thinking about what you need to write down and what you don't, this is a good place to start. Learning outcome 1, determining the value of the different ways in which a drug might be considered effective. So in the earlier lecture, I said to you, it's very hard to talk to Indigenous communities and get knowledge that is authentically trackable back to some kind of pre-recorded history period, because we don't know how contact with all kinds of cultures, not just white culture, if for example with West Australian Aboriginal people, there's a long history of their interactions with Malay peoples in the northern part of Australia as well, and that predates white contact. So when we're talking to any Indigenous community about their medical practices, we can't put our hand on our heart and say, yep, this is the way it was done 10,000 or 20,000 or 60,000 years ago. We are on more stable ground when we look at the written word, when we look at written evidence. We're on quite stable ground when we take bits out of people's bodies and actually test them for drug use. But there is a lot of guesswork in this. Do we need to know how to use something effectively? Do we need to know how something works in order to use it effectively? So do you think you need to know how to use a plant in order to use it effectively? Yes? Yes, some people say yes, some people say no. You might not have the faintest idea of how that thing works in your body, but you'll still use it. And in fact, that's what we did in pre-science, in the pre-modern era. We were using all kinds of plants for all kinds of things. We had no idea. We thought perhaps they rebalanced the humours or something like that. That was our knowledge that we had. Really, the reason I've got this at the front of the lecture is that I talk about a lot of recipes and a lot of weird drug stuff, and please don't try this at home. I mean, you can if you are. I'm just saying I take no responsibility for what you do in the privacy of your own home with your own aluminium saucepan and your own weird ingredients. I'm a classic brewer upper of this kind of stuff. I've been doing this kind of thing for years. I've experimented on people with stuff for years. Completely wicked of me, of course, but actually it's quite a lot of fun. But I didn't use dangerous ingredients. And a lot of the ingredients in ancient medicines are actually really dangerous, like lead and things like that. So just, you know, exercise a little caution. If you absolutely must make these things at home, do exercise a little bit of caution. So 2 questions, important questions. How do we know what ancient drugs were used and why? And the second question is, how do we measure the effect of an ancient drug? The first question is quite easy to answer. We've got pharmacopoeias, we've got physical evidence. You know, we know about people's worldview, about their view of the human body and why they took these products. And I used the example of willow bark in the previous lecture as well, as a way of illustrating good scientific thinking when we're looking about drug development, when we're looking at drug development. But we know that willow turns up as an ingredient in some ancient pharmacopoeias as well. So, does this mean that ancient people knew about aspirin? Aspirin's key ingredient is salicylic acid, and it was isolated in the 1800s from willow bark. So does that mean that people before then, when they used willow, they knew it had healing, curative properties? I believe the answer is no, and I have various reasons for believing this. The main reason I believe this is that we do have effective drugs in nature. That poor person, they're locked out, aren't they? They'll have to come around the front, unless you can open it from the inside, and I don't know if you can. So if you want to try, have at it. Effective drugs do exist in nature in really simple forms, like opium. Really easy to harvest, really easy to get hold of. Cannabis, easy to use, easy to harvest. But usually the drugs that are effective are in very tiny amounts within other plants. So they're in the plant, but they're in a very tiny amount. When you look at white willow bark, which is what poor old Dr. Edward Stone was chewing when he was trying to cure his intermittent fever and then gave it to everybody, that has actually quite a low concentration of salicylin in it compared to other sorts of places where we can get aspirin from naturally. So if you wanted to take, a standardised modern dose, 40 to 60 milligrams of salicylin, that would be actually quite hard to get out of chewing bark. Be hard to get out of drinking tea. There's a lot of tannins in willow bark as well, and my guess is that you would start feeling really sick before you got anywhere near therapeutic dose by trying to do this naturally. So we had to isolate it and put it into some kind of, base that won't make us sick, calcium carbonate base, in order to use that drug effectively. And of course, aspirin does still affect your stomach quite badly. We then had to develop forms of aspirin that didn't. So it's nice to think that ancient peoples had all this tremendous wisdom about plants and what they could do and what they couldn't do, but they may not actually have been much wiser than us at all, because they really didn't know what was going on inside these plants. The second question is, how do we measure the effect of an ancient drug? So you remember the story of Reverend Edward Stone when he powdered up his willow bark and gave it to all the people in his parish. I'll bet a lot of his patients got diarrhoea after having that, because this was powdered straight up willow bark. It would have been full of tannins. I bet they got stomach cramps. But Edward Stone didn't report anything like that when he wrote up his paper for the Royal Society. He didn't report side effects. But that's because I think the people didn't report side effects to him, because stomach cramps and diarrhoea were normal in 18th century England. We're looking at the era of pre-refrigerated food, unsafe water supply. So cramps and diarrhoea, not uncommon for people, and it's not necessarily associated with taking that powder. And in any case, we all know that diarrhoea is good for you when we live in the pre-modern era of medicine. It helps to rebalance your humours, so a bit of diarrhoea is quite good. Not a bad side effect at all. Different way of thinking about the human body. Okay, probably already feeling rotten. Probably not the best test subjects for a drug, even if we like to test drugs on clinical populations. I don't know, probably not feeling terribly well at all. So if we look at Ryle's rules, Edward Stone's experiment doesn't really measure up in lots of ways to it. So remember, he said that we needed to choose our people carefully, and Edward Stone just went round and gave it to anyone who was sick, and they could have had all kinds of different illnesses. Some could have had just a fever, some could have had malaria. We don't know. Ancient writers in pharmacopoeias are always telling us their recipes are effective, but they don't provide us with any proof of that. They just say effective. They write at the end, effective. Always works. 1,000,000 times effective. It's great. We don't know whether it worked or not. We don't know how they were measuring effectiveness. Did the person not die? That's a very low bar to set when you're looking at kind of drug treatment for illnesses. We ideally want people not to die, but that's a very low bar. They don't talk about side effects, usually. There's no mention of side effects here. There's 1,000,000 confounding factors when we think about ancient medicine and whether it worked or not, because we don't know what on earth was going on in those civilizations and in those societies, what they were eating and drinking and what else they were doing. So let's think like modern people for a second. We can suspend our disbelief and come back to the modern era. Let's think about this. Tuberculosis used to be a real scourge in Western countries, and there were huge public health campaigns against it. But today, it's not nearly so much of a problem in most Western countries. So how could we measure the effectiveness of a drug against tuberculosis? What do you think? What are some measures we could use to say, yep, this drug is working? We've released the drug into the wild. Is it working? Yes. Reducing the symptoms of tuberculosis, so there's fewer people with tuberculosis symptoms. What else? Absolutely, reduce cases in large populations. How else might we tell it's working? What other things might we see happening around us that tell us this drug is working? People recovering. Yep, absolutely. There used to be specialised TB hospitals. We would be closing them because we wouldn't need them anymore. That's a way of measuring the effectiveness of a drug. Okay, it's something we can actually put our hand on and say it works. But these measures don't work for all types of drugs. For example, we have closed a lot of mental hospitals in Australia, and yet our diagnosis of mental disorders is going through the roof. So the drugs we're using for those are not curing anything, but they're helping us manage the symptoms so we don't lock people up anymore. And I will give you 2 entire lectures on that later in semester to explain how we got from A to B with that particular one. Okay, if we want to test ancient drug formulas, we need to understand their weights and measures, and we often can't because they often don't tell us what they were. And when they do tell us what they are, they don't make any sense to us. They vary considerably over time and across the globe. This wasn't good enough for Johann Christian Ryle, because you can see one of the things he really wanted us to do was to standardise our doses and develop these common vocabularies for understanding drugs and the way they work. And without this, we are just floundering in the dark when we try and do drug development. We can identify some ancient diseases in some pharmacopoeias. Epilepsy, for example, that's been known to human history for a long time. It has very distinctive symptoms. But fever, vomiting, headache, completely vague. We have no idea what those illnesses are a lot of the time. In fact, I will give you an entire lecture on the history of cancer in this unit, which shows you just how hard it is to treat something when you're all talking about different things. It was 27 million different diseases in history. Some would argue cancer still is 27 million different diseases. That's what you're up against. Okay. So let's talk about plants, let's talk about medicines and what we can do and the fun we can have with them. Okay, without further ado, back to basics. Here we go. In E-Tute 2, you're going to look at bioprospecting, and it will tell you how we get drugs out of nature, how we find plants that are interesting and fun and tear them to pieces and get stuff out of them. But I'm going to ask you some questions because I want to know how much knowledge you have about this kind of stuff, because some of you might have quite a bit and some of you might not have a clue. So, what is mint tea good for medicinally? If you wanted to use mint tea to treat something, what would you use it to treat? Who knows? Peppermint tea, what would you use it for? Yes? Maybe. I don't know anyone who drinks it for anxiety. Yes? Congestion. What kind of congestion? Nasal congestion? Yes? It helps? Debloating. Yes, you're on the right track. Gastrointestinal problems. It helps you pass gas. And it helps often stop stomach cramps as well too. It's an antispasmodic. Now there's a very small amount of that in menthol, but a lot of people drink mint tea for gut problems. That's the most common use of it traditionally, is for stomach problems. Okay. Aloes. Aloes comes from, you know, when you break an aloe plant and it's got sort of goo inside it. What do we use aloes for? Yes. Burns. Spot on. Anyone had this rubbed on a burn? Hey, Mum's sent you out to the garden. Like, get the aloe plant. Yes, absolutely. Me too. Sunburn. Burns and sunburn. Good. Echinacea. Come on. What do we take echinacea for? It's a root. Powdered root. What do we take it for? Maybe it's gone completely out of fashion. Oh, How interesting. When I was growing up, everybody was taking echinacea for colds and flu. You can still buy it at the pharmacist. There's masses of echinacea available in the supplement section for cold and flu treatment. Not sure if it actually works, but that's what people take it for. Okay. Autumn crocus bulbs. Now, they've got colchicine in them. What would we use that for? What do we treat with colchicine? It still happens in people. It's a very 18th century disease, but people still get it. Both my parents had it. Gout. We treat gout with colchicine that comes out of the autumn crocus bulb. And it was experimentation with this, and people figured out that actually you could give people this terribly toxic alkaloid in small doses, and lo and behold, it would treat their gout symptoms. And gout is so painful. Uric acid crystal deposits around the joints, usually in the toes, cripples people. Really, really painful. This treats it. Okay. What is chamomile tea good for? Absolutely nothing. I hate it. It's the most revolting substance that has ever been invented, and I like to say this every year in my lecture. What do people use chamomile tea for? Yes. Sleep. Yes. Apparently it works, but you won't get me taking that stuff. That's why God made benzodiazepines, people. You do not have to drink this filth. So, chamomile tea. What are hemp seeds good for in their non-recreational form? What do we get out of hemp seeds that is useful? Not quite. Not out of the seeds. Get it out of the leaves, but not out of the seeds. What do we use the seeds for? If we crush them, what can we extract? Oil. Yes, hemp oil. And sometimes it's not psychoreactive at all. Okay, useful product. Okay, what do you need to know about eating foods that contain a lot of poppy seeds, especially if you are a FIFO worker and get drug tested regularly? Eating a food with a lot of poppy seeds in it can do what? Yes, you'll fail a drug test. That poppy seed muffin is a bad idea if you're on your way to wee in a cup. And only tiny amounts of poppy seeds can do this. It can give a false positive result for opiates and also for codeine. So interesting. Very good. All right. Excellent. That was not a bad little trip round nature. Actually, I'll just ask you about the last one as well. Give me a medicinal use for cloves. Clove oil. Anyone here doing dentistry? Oh man, clove oil is a topical anaesthetic, and it was used in dentistry for centuries. And old-fashioned dentists, when I was growing up, you would still smell it in their dental set. Well, I can't smell it now without just, because it makes me think of having drilling and bad things. Clove oil is a topical anaesthetic, and it's analgesic. Okay. Cumin seeds. What might you eat cumin seeds for? Cumin seeds. Not just because you like them. Why might you eat them? It's a bit like peppermint tea. It'll actually help you get rid of gas, and it'll stop you getting gas in the first place. Actually works. And what about cinnamon? What can we use cinnamon for medicinally? Or just in terms of general health? What can we use cinnamon for? Anyone know? Balances your blood sugar, and it can help you with weight loss. Yes. And this is actual science. There's actual science behind this. So interesting. Now, all of these things turn up in ancient medicines, but they turn up in weird quantities and in weird preparations. Alrighty, let's move on. We all know about these. These are the fun ones. These are the psychoactive or the CNS stimulating plants. They can change your states of, perception and mood, awareness, etc. Here they all are: hemp, opium, opium poppy, coca leaves, betel nut, kava, tobacco, peyote, mushrooms, plus things we've probably never heard of that are being brewed up as we speak. But these would be the main ones that people have been extracting out of plants for a long time, for good times and for, mental health treatment, I suppose you could call it, in its own way. Alrighty, what about dirt? This is what the alchemists gave to us in terms of modern medicine. They brought minerals into the pharmacopoeia. How can we use dirt to cure people of things? How can we use rocks? This does not make sense. All right, how about we use chalk in medicine? Calcium carbonate. How might we use that in medicine? in drug medicine particularly. Have you ever taken a pill recently? Is it white? Yeah, it's calcium carbonate. It's the most common base we use for a lot of drugs that we take on an everyday basis. It's chalk. Folks, you could probably write on a blackboard with it. Give it a try one time. Just take your pill, try writing on a blackboard and see what happens. Okay, it's chalk. Why might we use red ochre? Aboriginal people used to eat red ochre for medicine. Why would we do that? What's in red ochre that might be useful for the human body? Iron, yes. Iron supplementation. Minerals can also be what we call an anti-helminthic. They can help you to purge worms if you have an infestation of parasites. They can really do the job there. Clay can be very good at that too. What about mercury? What was mercury used traditionally to cure in European medicine until quite recently, until we got antibiotics? Do you know? Yes, very specific bacterial infections, sexually transmitted. It was used for what used to be called venereal disease, named after the goddess Venus. Yeah, syphilis in particular. Syphilis would respond to mercury treatment. Could also drive you mad, could also make your teeth fall out, but, you know, that was your choice. Arsenic. What is arsenic good for? Anything? It's in a lot of medicines. It's toxic at high doses, but in smaller doses. People used to eat it for their health. They actually believed it was good for them. But of course, if you eat too much of it, you will actually die. You'll become very sick, get a lot of gastric distress. Favoured in Agatha Christie novels as the means of poisoning people, because it was in so many households, because you use it to get rid of pests in wood. You could use it for wood treatment, termite treatment, things like that. It is actually useful, but just also quite dangerous. Adding liquids to reactive metal containers was really popular in old pharmacopoeias, so that the qualities of the bronze could go into the wine or whatever it is that you were putting in there, especially if you stood it outside in the sun, and then it would get warm and somehow it would be wonderfully transformed. But of course that can actually happen. If you put a liquid into a reactive container, it can actually change the liquid, for better or worse. You have to be a little bit careful sometimes with that. Bronze and copper particularly will do that. Tell me about verdigris, copper carbonate. So it's that funny, it's actually the colour of these chairs in this lecture theatre. That is verdigris green. It's a weird kind of green. You get it on your old bronze pipes and taps and copper pipes. It's that green sort of corrosion. It's copper carbonate. How could we use this medicinally? Any ideas? It's growing there, right there on your tap. Okay, it's antibacterial. And application to it to wounds can actually promote wound healing. Very common ingredient in a lot of old medicines. Gold and silver. Are you kidding me? Can we use these medicinally? Or are we in the realms of alchemy and nonsense now? Actually, we can. Gold treatment works for rheumatoid arthritis. You can take it orally, or you can have it injected into the joint in a carrier. Like, they're not just injecting liquid gold into you. We don't know how it works. We don't know why it works. And it takes a while to work, but it works. Too weird. Silver. Has anyone seen a colloidal silver dressing? You can actually buy them at the pharmacy. If you go to the right kind of pharmacy, you can buy silver dressings. They're dressings impregnated with colloidal silver. Very powerful antibacterial properties. Really useful when you've got leg ulcers in old people, wounds that aren't healing. Often a silver dressing can bring that wound round where something else won't. Antibacterial, too weird. Taking gold and silver into the body, like colloidal silver has become very huge in the alternative medicine scene. People are drinking it and gargling it. Your gums will turn blue. So if you want blue gums, go for it. Your eyeballs can also start turning blue if you overdo it. Any metal in the body can be toxic. The body is not designed to digest most metals properly. So a lot of these will actually make you quite sick if you overdo it. But gold and silver. Antimony, always turning up in old recipes, absolutely extraordinary. Nasty kind of metal, used to give people diarrhoea. Purge them, because this is a metal the body doesn't like. You take that in and whoosh, Out the other end it comes, at speed, along with everything else, which in the era of heroic medicine and lots of purging is considered a good thing. Okay, tell me about zinc. How do we use zinc still in modern medicine? Or healthcare in any way, shape or form? Yes?
Sunscreen?
Yes, absolutely. It's a really good sunscreen. What else is it good for? Anyone here got children? No? Anyone here ever heard of nappy rash? Yeah, zinc cream. Zinc cream is great for topical, any kind of irritation and skin topical application. It's really, really useful. So we still use all of this stuff in medicine. Anybody here take zinc supplements? Have you seen them in the pharmacy? Yeah, male reproductive health. It's recommended. Don't know if there's any science behind that, but anyway, there it is. Zinc, also people believe it can shorten having a cold or flu. The studies are out there. You can go and look at them. So we're actually using all of this stuff. And all of this stuff turns up in these old recipes. Alcohol. Woohoo! We're going to have a whole lecture on this and on the whole principle of alcohol and how it works in the body and what the body does to it. But yes, it was prescribed as medicine right well into the 20th century. In most Western countries, you could still get alcohol prescribed to you by a doctor to take if you wanted to. That's a very, very ancient recipe. We know drinking it makes us feel better, but also topically, especially if it's a distilled alcohol, it's antiseptic. And also for pain relief, you know, especially if there's nothing else available and you have to have your legs sawn off. That's probably all you've got, you know, can spill it on the wound and you can drink it as well. Alrighty, other sources. Honey. What's raw honey good for? Yes, raw honey, proper raw honey, genuine bona fide certificated raw honey is antiseptic. It's really good for healing what? What can we put it on where it can really help? Burns. Not straight away. Don't recommend putting it on straight away. Do the cold water treatment straight away. But once the burn has formed, yeah, it can be used. Okay. Insects are absolutely full of bioactive compounds of all kinds. There's probably a whole future in pharmacology here in the insect department. If you are into insects and into pharmacology, there's a nice Venn diagram overlap there. I would send you down that rabbit hole, absolutely. Cantharides, have any of you heard of that? Spanish fly. Do you know what that was traditionally used for? It's a burning or blistering product you can get out of the beetles, these little beetles. An aphrodisiac. Absolutely. But also it was used to raise blisters on the skin of people who had wounds that wouldn't heal, because you've got to draw the healing powers to the wound out of the body. I actually saw this work in real life, completely by accident, not with blister beetles. I was nursing an old lady. She had a leg ulcer that would not heal, not even with a silver dressing. And we tried a different dressing on her, and she was allergic to the latex in the glue on the dressing. So she got big fat blisters all round her leg ulcer. And I was thinking like, shit, next stop, amputation, because this is just going so badly. And as the blisters healed, the ulcer healed. And I would not have believed that had I not seen it with my own eyes. So perhaps there's something to blistering theory after all. Mummies. Actual Egyptian mummies, plus of course bogus ones which were modern people killed and sort of mummified and then sold as mummies to gullible tourists, which did go on, unfortunately, in Egypt because there was good money to be made. There's gold in their pyramids, good money to be made out of flogging mummies to people. Mummies had resins in their bandages and so forth, very highly prized for grinding up. There was believed to be bitumen, but mostly it was a lot of resin. But also in artist's pigment. There's actually an artist's pigment that's still called mummy brown, because it was the colour you got out of ground up mummy mixed with oil, and then, you know, you could do your painting with it. Using the gall of any animal, it has bile salts in it. They're mildly caustic. So if perhaps you have something you want to burn away, topically in medicine, you could use the ox gall or turtle gall or whatever gall you wanted to use. Do we have any Latin scholars here? Adeps hominis. Anyone got any ideas what that means? It's on that jar there next to the mummy. Adeps hominis. What does adipose mean in English? Fat. Okay, and hominis means human. So what do you think we have in that jar? Human fat! How cool is that? Isn't that disgusting? But it was actually used as a base for medicines. Because you've got rendered fat in there, you can mix stuff into it and slap it on. Pretty gross, but there you go. It's on an actual jar from the 1700s. And finally, the magical stuff. We lost quite a lot of ancient Egyptian papyri to people who snipped them up and drank them in water, burned them, put the ashes in water and drank them, hoping that this ancient writing would somehow cure their illness. Or you could write out a spell on a piece of paper and then you could dissolve that in water and then you could drink it if you wanted to do a DIY kind of thing yourself. Absolutely a way of doing things. Look, that's Mummy Brown. I just have to show you that. I didn't think they still made it. It doesn't still have mummy in it. Okay, we don't do that anymore. But that particular shade, Mummy Brown. Wow. Okay. So now that we've done all of that and you've shown me how very smart you are about ancient products, that's all good. We're going to talk about recipes, putting all of this stuff together and seeing if any of these recipes could perhaps have worked. So, let's have a look. Here are our ancient pharmacopoeias. These are the ones. I'm going to try and give you a recipe from each of these, and we're just going to have a little look over a big amount of time and space and global culture, just to see if we can see any patterns or any similarities there. So these are some pre-modern pharmacopoeias, right the way down to this 1657 one, teetering on the verge of the early modern period. Let's have a look and see what they say. So we'll start with the Abers Papyrus. This is fantastic. You can unroll it for yourself if you click that link. In your spare time, you can go and look at it. It's got a translation. You can look at every single recipe in the Abers Papyrus. It's a gorgeous little interactive website we have there. So it's got herbal and magical treatments for all kinds of problems in there. Most of the medical treatments are based on purging. So there's nothing sort of revolutionary there, no hidden cures for cancer. It is strictly purging. So the body's full of toxins. The toxins cause the illness. We have to purge them out of the body. Very like humoral theory. Here we go. Now this recipe, noise in the southern sky since dusk, uproar in the northern sky, a pillar has fallen in the water, the crew of Ray is driving in their mooring post. Because heads have fallen in the water, who will fetch him and find him? I will fetch him and I will find him. I have fetched your heads, have attached your necks, and have fastened your severed parts in their proper places. I have fetched you to expel the influence of a god, of a dead man or dead woman, etc. Words to be said with gall of tortoise, to be crushed with honey, to be put on the eyelids. Effective, 1,000,000 times. You often get that in the Abers Papyrus. This is a treatment for trachoma, so a kind of eye infection, and if you used the gall of a tortoise, possibly it could actually help. It would sting like crazy, but it might actually help. Maybe the honey might sort of mitigate it a bit, but you can't do it without saying the spell. You have to say the spell or it won't work. Because actually these are dead people causing this person trouble. The numinous in the ancient world was a very crowded place. That is the world beyond what we see. And here, very crowded place full of very angry, annoyed ancestors, all kinds of people there. So, have to say the spell. Here's a transliteration of something a bit less scary in the Abers Papyrus. These are treatments for reducing plentiful urine. So you think you're weeing too much and you want to reduce that because you don't want to drain all of the humus from your body. This is what you need. Grassroots, grapes, honey, juniper berries, and sweet beer. Now we've got proportions there, but we don't have actual amounts. It's nice to have proportions because we often don't even have that. And we cook. How? We don't know. We strain. How? We don't know. And we take it for one day, and we don't know how often we need to take it or in what quantities. But it's just assumed that you would somehow know this. So you can see there's some obvious problems already with the wisdom of the ancients in that it's very hard to replicate this stuff because there's no weights and measures there. Okay, here we have the recipes for 52 ailments. This is this gorgeous silk kind of booklet that was found in this Chinese tomb. All of these wonderful recipes in it. And this is for swellings in the groin area. Could be cancer, could be hernia, could be swollen glands, could be anything. We don't know. Swellings in that area. So we have to chant an incantation, spouting. Okay, 3 times. The spirit of heaven comes down to prevent sickness. The goddess, according to her sequence, listens to the spirits. A certain fox lives in a place where it does not belong. I'm presuming these are the swellings, the certain fox. Deceased, If you do not desist, I will cut you apart with an axe. Then you grasp a piece of hemp cloth and hit the patient with it 7 times. And then you do it again 7 more times. If that doesn't fix it, I don't know what will. Okay, so again, we're in the realm of magic. This is what we might consider, and a lot of world medicine is like this, these ancient recipes, shamanism. Okay, so we have a person who is a bridge between the numinous, the unseen world, and the world in which we live. And that person can give you an amulet, they can do a sacrifice for you, they can read some entrails, they can prophesy for you, they can do divination, they can tell you who's cursed you, they can put a curse on someone for you if you would like to get them back. They can teach you, they can go into a trance, they can communicate with animals, they can communicate with spirits. They have a range of abilities across different cultures and different expectations of the people who live around them. Very common global practice. It's like almost like the default form of religion across the world is shamanism. Could be male or female, but they are this bridge, because illness is something that's caused by bad stuff out there. And of course the exception to this is the Hippocratic corpus, which doesn't look out there, it looks here in the natural world for stuff that goes wrong. So here we have 3 ulcer dressings, mercifully free of charms and spells and having to whack people with hemp cloths. In these particular recipes, you're using particular products. They're all different recipes. There's no quantities, but like there's a bit of proportions, equal part, in like manner. That's fine. We have gall and wine, astringent, raw honey, copper salt. Okay, so again, we've got copper and it's salt and probably verdigris in there as well. That's usually what we call flowers of copper. It's usually verdigris or copper carbonate. And, you know, all of these things potentially could be good for an ulcer. But it's just we're throwing a lot of stuff at that ulcer and we don't know which one of those ingredients is going to do the job on the ulcer. So we're throwing everything at it that we have. It could work, but it's very sort of scattergun approach to healing. Dioscorides. I like Dioscorides. He wrote this fabulous, enormous book called De Materia Medica. And it's actually about 5 books put together, all about stuff that you can make into drugs. That's really what De Materia Medica means, stuff you can use for medicine. And this was the first authoritative Western herbal, Western pharmacopoeia. Again, it was used right up until the 1800s. People were still looking in Dioscorides for cures for things. Absolutely extraordinary. He's got about 600 plants in it, but we can't identify what half of them are, which is so annoying because these plants were amazing. They cured everything, but we can't tell what they are now. He's also got some spells in there, I'm afraid, and some talismans and some snake charms and things like that. This is an example. This is from his book of roots. He has a book on leaves and a book on roots and stuff like that. This is a shrub called Poterion. That's what Dioscorides calls it. This is how he describes it. We have 3 different plants which it could be, but we're not quite sure which one it is. There have been some trials done with one of them, but there's not really enough there to keep going with because, you know, it's not actually that spectacular in its healing properties. And it took us that long to try and figure out which one of these plants is Poterion. Possibly in Dioscorides' time, Poterion looked absolutely the goat because there was nothing else. But in our time where we have effective medicines, this kind of thing, we find something, it's probably not, may not be worth the search that we have to go through to find it. Classical Islam took everything from the ancient world and preserved it mercifully and then was able to transmit it back to Europe from about the 1200s onwards and wrote commentaries and explored, developed, invented all kinds of things. So, classical Islam, humoral theory, I'm afraid, because of course taking everything from the classical era full of humoral theory, that came into Islamic medicine as well. So, mercury-based compounds, first used by Islamic physicians, and the chap I'm interested in for this lecture is Ibn Sina, or Avicenna, who wrote Al-Qanun, the Canon of Medicine. This is a fascinating book. It's actually available through our library, I think online. You can read it. It's in an English translation. Absolutely fascinating. So this is a recipe from Al-Qanun to try to produce more breast milk. So eat the udders of sheep and goats. That's what we call sympathetic magic. Sheep and goats have udders, they produce milk. If we eat them, we'll produce milk. Good. That's good pre-modern thinking. That's how it works. Different understanding of the human body. But there's other recipes here like earthworms, dill, sesame, dill again. Dill is a galactagogue, so it actually does help to produce extra breast milk. It really does work. There are a couple of things that actually do this, and they're traditional medicines in various cultures. Fennel does it as well. Sesame seeds, all of them, are considered to be effective in producing extra breast milk. I don't know how much quite you have to take or eat of these products, but they are traditionally used in a lot of cultures for this. So, and finally, Jean de Reno, not Jean Reno the actor, but Jean de Reno, probably his ancestor, the amazing French pharmacologist, alchemist, wild man, great writer of the big fat book on everything you need to know about how to be a chemist, how to be an apothecary, how to be a healer, because this book will teach you everything you need to know. It will teach you about natural philosophy and the stars and the planets, but it will also teach you how to make salves, how to make potions, how to diagnose things, how to scrape things off people, how to do everything, what tools you need in your shop if you're going to be selling all of this stuff and concocting it. It's an extraordinary book. You can read it in our library. It's all available online. It's absolutely gorgeous. This is an English translation of it. I think it's fantastic because it brings together alchemy and botany and all of this kind of really wonderful, wild, early modern stuff. So let's have a look. There you go. This is just part of the index, which I love. You've got sulfur, quicksilver, which is mercury. We've got mummy, so of medicaments taken from animals either whole in parts. So mummy was considered to be an animal, which is really interesting because actually it was a human being. Now Spanish flies, cantharides, ants, the silkworm. There's all kinds of stuff in there. It's gorgeous. The S's are often written as F's. So you have to get, like, your eyes have to get used to this kind of weird print from this era, but extraordinarily interesting reading. Here we go. Now, this is my attempt to transliterate one of the recipes in this book. So RX is at the front of every recipe in this book. RX, which as we know, is actually prescription. That's still the symbol we use when we're writing notes about particular prescriptions. RX. Still using that symbol. The roots of chicory, sorrel, licorice, endive, fumitory, who knows what that is, agrimony, ooh, that sounds terrible. 3 cordial flowers, we make a decoction, we put some rhubarb in it, syrup of violets. This would have smelled and tasted wonderful as far as I can tell, but this is actually for reducing choler in your body, and choler is of course bile, so it's a purgative medicine. And chicory, sorrel, licorice and endive, by crikey, any one of those will give you diarrhea. All of them put together, I imagine it was pretty spectacular, the results that you got from that. And agrimony as a herb actually relieves diarrhea. So you've got some mercy in there, hopefully, that will be counterbalancing this terrible purgative that tasted wonderful, but boy, was not good at the other end. But it would do the job. It would reduce choler in your body, and that's what you want. So how did we get away from all of this? Well, we know we had an industrial revolution, we had a scientific revolution, we literally changed our way of thinking about the human body, about the known universe. We had empiricism, rationalism, inductivism. We needed all of those 3 things to help us break out of this particular trap that we were in. We needed alchemy and botany to grow up and become scientific so that we could actually start using them to produce proper, healthy, useful medicines. Still took us a long time to shake off humoral theory. So, is it worth it? There's a hell of a lot of old drug recipes out there. Is it worth us actually ploughing our way through them to try and find cures for diseases that we can't cure yet? Do ancient drugs work, and is it worth it? There's 2 questions there. The first question is, the short answer is yes, some of them do. Yeah, some of them do. The long answer is about it being worth it. We really don't know. We can't replicate a lot of these recipes because we don't know the quantities. We don't know the right ingredients in a lot of cases. We don't know the names of the plants, what we call them. We don't know the right conditions under which to make the drug. Should this be made in the middle of winter? Do we have to use heat? What do we need to do to make this drug? What containers do we need to use? A lot of the ingredients are actually really dangerous, like mercury and lead and, other fun stuff that you should not be playing with at home in your aluminium saucepan. Very dangerous. It takes time, patience, very careful experimentation and very transparent reporting, including the failures to produce a drug recipe that works for most people most of the time. So most of these conditions don't exist in the ancient world. So, you know, most of what we know about the ancient worlds and the pre and early modern world's drug research doesn't measure up to Ryle's rules. It really doesn't. Ryle's rules are so specific. We've got heavy theory driving everything. We've got people saying, Galen said that this herb works for this, you know, but it's actually not working for anything. We don't ever test it. We don't write up the results. We don't describe what we see with our own eyes. And we've got drugs being tested on practically everyone without, you know, any kind of consideration for choosing a sample population. We don't record the results properly in the ancient world. We don't really know what's going on. It's a mess out there. So when we do try and replicate ancient recipes, sometimes it can produce something that seems workable. But even if we can replicate it, the huge problem with these products is that they deteriorate really rapidly. This is the number one problem, pre-refrigeration era. So stuff was made to be used and consumed immediately. So there's a really limited shelf life for these products. We can't mass produce them the way we can mass produce modern drugs. We can't transport them. You know, if you have a beaker brimming with ox gall and, you know, garlic and everything, and it's got to be consumed within the next 24 hours, you can't put that in a post box and send it to America for someone, you know, you can't do it. You have to make it locally. So they can't be transported the way we can transport a lot of modern drugs. But having said all of that and having been someone who's done this, it's actually quite fun. It is quite fun, and occasionally it is successful. And in this unit, we actually have anecdotes throughout this unit of successful discoveries from ancient recipes and like ancient traditional herbs that were considered to have certain properties and so forth. So yeah, as a long shot, it might lead us to new pathways for isolating effective trace elements, effective molecules. It might, but it's an awfully big world out there, a lot of recipes. Possibly we could be using our energy for different things, but as I say, if it's fun, maybe you could give it a go. So that is me for this week, folks, and I'm sure you're completely addled and you want to all go and rush off and start studying history and drugs and go home with your aluminium saucepan. Next week, Ricky, a much more sober human being than I am, will be taking you through the human body as it actually works. Not how ancient people thought it worked, but how it actually works. So what happens to drugs when you take them, and what the body does to that drug, and how we get metabolites and things like that coming out of it. Can I just recommend to you before you go, have a go at eTute 1 before you come to next week's lectures. It'll open on Monday next week. Have a go at it. The lecture will make more sense, I promise you. So I will see you for cannabis in a few weeks' time. That will be interesting and exciting. Thank you very much. I will see you when I see you. Thank you. Goodbye. Thank you. Goodbye. Thank you. Goodbye. I'm glad there are no questions. I love it when there's no questions. Nobody would dare. Wonderful. Excellent. We are done. Off you go. Thank you. It's very warm in here. Goodbye. Thank you. Goodbye. Thank you. Oh, we found our way in here, which was thank you. Goodbye. Thank you. I hope the weather's not too horrible out there. Oh, thank you. Hooroo. Be good. Travel safely. Horrible weather. Thank you. Oh, just you wait till next week. Sorry? Yes, yes it is. Ricky Chen, the one and only. Our very own. Oh boy. So looking forward to going home. Goodbye.